movie I want to take a look at is A Hunting Accident, which is based on a Chekhov novel called A Shooting Accident. And I was going to say, like, this was a movie that I just picked at random because I was just flipping through the Moss film list, and I just saw the thumbnail. I'm like, oh, okay, that looks quite interesting.
Yeah.
So so I'm watching it on, so I watched it on Wednesday and I rewatched over and over again. I mean, the way that it's shot is just so beautiful. I mean, we talked about Tarkovsky's tracking shots. Like, you have so many excellent tracking shots. You have excellent scenery. You have, the acting, is phenomenal, to say the least. But I think the entire way the story is played out, it's just so beautiful, but it's also very ambiguous, because we start off with this publisher, and have you ever seen that movie, The Man Who Would Be King, with Sean Connery and Michael Caine?
It's been a while, yes.
It kind of reminds me of that because we're talking about a guy who walks into a publisher and he gives him a book, and he says, I've written a story. I would very much like you to take a look at it. And the guy, he flips through and he's like, I noticed that it's written in the first person. Like, is this about you? And it's like, yeah, I was a witness to all these things. And
Позвольте представиться. Кандидат прав Сергей Петрович Камышев, бывший судебный следователь.
Весьма рад. Чем могу быть полезен?
Я написал повесть, которую бы хотел напечатать в вашей газете.
Садитесь.
Что?
Садитесь, говорю.
Благодарю вас. Я вам признаюсь откровенно, я написал эту повесть не для авторской славы.
А для чего же, интересно?
По некоторым причинам материального порядка. Как бы заработать хочется.
Неважно. Каков сюжет вашей повести?
Сюжет не новый. Убийство, любовь. Бульварщина. Вы прочтите, узнаете. Все, что изображено в этой повести, от крышки до крышки, происходило на моих глазах. Я был и свидетелем, и действующим лицом.
Что ж, похвально. А как называется ваша повесть?
Драма. На охоте.
Хорошо, оставьте, но вам придется подождать.
Долго?
Не знаю, в Москве сплошные беллетристы, все пишут. Зайдите месяца через 2, через 3. И не очень спешите.
Долгонько. Ну что ж, не буду настаивать. Пусть будет по-вашему. Спасибо за аудиенцию, пойду домой. Буду жить надеждами, 3 месяца надежд. Это кое-что значит. Честь имею.
Позвольте. Вы пишете здесь от первого лица. Стало быть, подсудебным следователем вы разумеете себя?
Да. Хотя роль моя в этой повести несколько скандальная. Но через 3 месяца. Честь имею.
And so you're taken on this journey to where you're following the narrator, even though he's not actually narrating. You get to see the story play out, from his point of view, where he goes to visit his friend, the Count, and they meet this wild child, Olga or Olyenka, and it's very simplistic at first because it's very much what you would expect. A poor girl, she gets married and she kind of finds herself in in the higher echelons of society, but it's not as simple, is it?
Right, because she realized she married the wrong person, and she realized that perhaps marrying for love and passion would have been much more satisfying than marrying for money and status.
So I want to ask you this because Kamyshev, like when we first see Kamyshev, like he's very much a reserved guy. You really don't know that much about him. I mean, he really doesn't drink, and he's friends with this count who's very much, I mean, for lack of a better word, he's a wastrel. He just wastes everything around him to the
Mhm.
point. And I think he even mentions that, the doctor tells him he needs to stop drinking or else his liver is going to give out.
Mhm.
But but he just doesn't listen. Like he's just going to keep partying, like crazy. And and for me, I kind of feel like Kamyshev is like the one guy that everybody doesn't really understand or doesn't really know that much about, because we know what's going on with the count. Kalidas, he's kind of in the background. What I found humorous about Kalidas is that every time you see a shot of him, he's always eating
He's
something.
eating
Did you
something.
did you catch that?
Yes, I'm like, why is he always eating? I think I don't know. I didn't get that. Yeah.
But I mean with Kamyshev, like he's very much a reserved guy. He's not he's not someone you would really think of as a romantic person, because if I'm remembering correctly, he's like a country lawyer or something, or a judge or
Yeah.
something.
He's
So
an investigator, lawyer. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so he's the last person you would think would ever get entangled in this whole mess. But
Mhm.
as the story progresses, you come to find that that Olyanka is very much, enamored with him, to the point where, on her wedding day, they go outside and they kiss and they're like having a great time. And then he's like, "Oh shit, you're married. Okay, you got to get away from me here." Um, but yeah, what were your thoughts on Kamyshev and Olyanka as a couple?
Yeah. You kind of when they first interact, you kind of think, okay, these two should end up together. They're both young, they're both attractive, and you know, but things go differently. And she marries this older rich guy because she's sick of living in the woods with her demented father, and she just wants to get
Yeah,
out of that.
yeah, you would think that they would move to the city, but no, they keep living in the woods.
Right.
They live in a bigger house, but they still live in the woods.
Right. And by the way, to come back to what you were saying about the beauty of the film, it is pretty stunning. It's 1978, and it looks so beautiful. I mean, the production design, the setting, the location, the houses, it all looks so beautiful and lush. There's like a lot of, especially in the Count's house, there's a lot of elements that he picked up, looks like from his travels. There's like stuff from Asia, and there's like rugs and the backdrops. It's also pretty and beautiful and stunning. Yeah, it's when you were introducing the film and you said that it's ambiguous and there's some things that kind of don't make sense, and I was questioning the motivations of some of the characters, because he wasn't, when he first meets her, Oleg, when he first meets this young woman, Olga, he's I didn't sense that he was enamored with her. He just kind of reacted to her because she was this wild young woman with long hair and a red dress running around and behaving basically like a creature in the woods would. um, but I didn't feel that he was enamored with her until they had that kiss on her wedding day, and I was just like, oh, that's I kind of was expecting it, but it wasn't shown to me. Maybe I missed it. And she was also kind of conflicted. She said she always loved him, but for some reason she could have married him because he was also well off, not as rich as the other guy, but she could have married him. Um, and then I stopped questioning all those things, because that's what I guess Chekhov wrote. He wrote these characters that are not black and white, and they're conflicted, and they make choices, and they regret the choices, and they make mistakes, and they try to fix them, but they don't try to fix them. They don't want to fix them. They don't know how to fix them. So it's all messy. It's a mess of decisions and unclear motivations, and it all kind of erupts in this tragedy.
Yeah, because to your point, Olga's very much someone, I think she's what, 19 years old in the movie, so she really,
Mhm.
she really doesn't know what she wants. She's very much a very passionate person. Um, so a part of me kind of doesn't feel that much sympathy for her, because it's like you're still a child, you're still trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
And to your point, if the reason why Kamyshev doesn't really pursue her, it's because he's very set in what he wants. He knows what works for him.
Mhm.
So, and I would also say too that the reason why he finally gives in is because she keeps insisting on it. She keeps forcing the issue on him to the
Mhm.
point where it's like he just can't resist it anymore. He has to give in to her.
Right.
Um, I mean, what I will also say too is the fact that, you don't really know that much about Olga either, because we know that she lives in the woods. We know that her dad is a bit crazy. I think he's like in a mental hospital or something, or
Yeah.
sanitarium.
Right.
Um, so really, when we meet these characters, it's we just accept them for who they are. We don't need to go into the backstory of knowing where she came from, or how did she get to that point, or how did Kamyshev come to live in the countryside and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. No need to overanalyze the film. There's also, I noticed that the flow is a little uneven in the film itself, and I think maybe it was done on purpose. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was wondering, because I noticed the same thing too, but then I was like, wait, if this is the publisher reading the novel, obviously it's going to be a bit disjointed, because it's going off of his perspective.
Mm.
That's the only thing
Yeah.
I can think of.
Right. Right. And an injection of the gypsy culture and the gypsies, the band of the gypsies that live in the count's house. Well, he hired them. He pays them to be there.
Yeah.
That's also interesting. And maybe it's probably a metaphor for who Olga was. She was kind of like this wandering spirit, not haven't matured quite yet to understand the consequences of her actions, and doesn't know what she wants, and kind of knows what she wants, but she's not sure. Um, yeah, but it's very interesting. The structure is very interesting, even though it's a framing, right?
Yeah.
He comes in with his book, and at the very end, he's also at that office, and the whole movie is basically what's in that book,
Hmm.
in a way.
Well,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, because because as the movie progresses, we get to see that Olga, obviously she's in a loveless relationship with this older man, and the older man gets very jealous because she's spending more time with these other people, and it gets to the point where he beats her one night, and she like flees to the count's house.
Hmm.
Um, but so in a way, you kind of sympathize with her for that, but at the same time, it's like, this is the 19th century. She's a woman with very little prospects. This is probably going to be the best she ever gets, so she kind of has to
Hmm.
suck it up and deal with it.
Hmm.
So where it becomes tragic is they go on a hunting trip, which is where we get the title of the movie. And 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 this part really confuses me, because we see Kamyshev and Olga having, walking around the woods, having a talk, while everybody else is kind of getting drunk and having a picnic out in the meadow. And then all of a sudden, like, the Count walks in with, with his dead wife, or not dead,
Hmm.
but she's like severely wounded.
Hmm.
So, and 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 I'm not sure if you came to the same conclusion. I kind of get You kind of get the feeling that Kamyshev was responsible for the entire thing. Um,
Yeah. Right. Right, because that's the last person we saw her with, and they were arguing, and then next thing you know, she screams in the distance, and then next thing we see her husband, the older guy, husband, is carrying her body. I mean, her wounded body out of the woods. Yeah, and then I think the purpose of that was to start to kind of give the audience the idea that either of those men could be the killer. You know.
yeah, and that's what I really liked about this movie, because it starts off as like what would seem like a simple romance story, and becomes almost this murder mystery kind of thing, where we're trying to figure out who
Yes.
who did it.
Mm.
Because because what happens is that Kamyshev he sentences the count to go off to a penal colony where he dies a few years later. But we have that very touching moment where near the end where she's kind of like on her deathbed, and he goes up to her and it's like, in my official capacity as the investigator, I need to know who did this to you. And you kind of get and you get the feeling that she still loves him, that she doesn't want to hurt him, and she knows who did it because she never says anything. She just dies.
Yeah, and why did he ask her about in front of two or three people that were in the room? Because he probably knew that she wouldn't give him away because she was so in love with him. She didn't want to hurt him.
Right. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what that would have accomplished, because even if she said it was you, I don't think they could have done anything, because the priest is there and he's just like, don't mind me, I'm just packing up all the stuff here.
Right. Yeah, that's the ambiguity of that film. That's yeah.
But I gotta say, from a technical standpoint, like because most of the movies that we've reviewed have pretty much been set within the Soviet period. So The Girls, Office Romance, I think with the exception of Solaris and Stalker, those are like futuristic, but they still have Soviet elements in there. This movie here is set in Imperial Russia during that period before the Soviet Union came to be.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just so brilliantly executed, the way that they shot this movie. There's this one scene I want to show you, and I kept watching it over and over again. It's a beautiful tracking shot. Give me a second here. Hold on. Let me get this here. It's when she's on the cart.
Oh, okay.
I mean, look at that! Look at that tracking shot right there.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
It's so smooth, and it gives you the impression that they're on the cart with her. Now, obviously, it sounds like they've got a dolly going on next to them, but look at that.
Yeah, they built the tracks to make sure that the camera doesn't wobble so much, because the cart would. I don't know if we don't even see the cart in the shot, so maybe when we don't see the horse and the cart itself, maybe they are on some sort of a dolly as well that moves them smoother. But there, like in that shot, she bobs a little bit, so maybe she is on the cart. Yeah, it's beautiful.
I mean, just look at how smooth it's run, because it gives you the impression that they're in the cart with her.
Yeah. And in 1978 they didn't have stabilizers. You couldn't stabilize, so it had to be in camera.
But look at that shot, like it's just so smooth and still. It's not wobbling or anything.
Yeah.
Because another thing too, because I was gonna say there was another shot. It's that one where they're with the gypsies, like. This shot here.
Oh, yeah.
The landscape shot is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I love that.
Look at that.
The mist coming in the background. Yeah, and the water and the little island that they stand on.
Because I'm wondering, how did they set all that up? Because you see statues, in the little pond, and you see like little swan, floating by.
Yeah.
And look at the lighting on that too. Look at that. It's so brilliant. Now this particular shot I really, really like. Look, see, you got the statues and everything. And you got the mist. Oh my God.
And the birds. Yep.
That's so beautiful.
It's gorgeous. Yeah, it takes a lot of, it takes a team of
and there's Kalidas, he's eating again.
He keeps eating. Yeah, beautiful. I mean, the film is shot beautifully. Obviously, it was not digital; it was on film at that time, and I could only imagine how much preparation had to go into it.
Well, especially because they're making a period piece. It's not like they can
Yeah.
just, shoot it, shoot in the streets of, Moscow or Leningrad. They have to go to like a particular place, which is perfect because the way that the movie is set, it's set up, in the countryside, so it works
Yeah.
perfectly for them. And even when the count goes into town, they really don't show that many shots of the town. They so focus on that one area.
Mhm.
What what I really really like is the fact that even though it's set, even though it's set in the woods, it's just as dramatic as what you would see in the city. And I think for me, when you're watching this movie, it's like, because the woods are supposed to be like a place of innocence, a place where people can run free and be free. And you sort of get that feeling at the very beginning, but as the movie progresses, you start to see the loss of innocence, really.
Right.
And I think Olga pretty much embodies the innocence that you see in in nature, because here's this wild, free-spirited woman that everybody's in love with, and then when she gets married, she becomes this docile, depressed kind of person, and at the end, Kamyshev kills her because it's like, I don't want you to turn into this bitter old woman. Like, I want to remember you as this young, beautiful, vivacious woman who was in love with life. It's kind of a mercy killing almost when you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Interesting.
Um, So I was going to ask, like, what were your thoughts on A Hunting Party as a film? Because, like I said, I mean, this is the first movie we watched that was set in a completely different time period.
Yeah, I was surprised when I read that you picked it, because I remember I watched it, obviously in original language, and when I was much younger back home, and I vaguely remember it because I don't think I would have I at that time I could appreciate the technicality of it and the aesthetics of it. I was just lost in confusing plots and confusing motivation and what motivations. It wasn't as clear to me. But
Yeah.
rewatching it again now, I could see how gorgeous this film is. And it's just, if you're making a film now that takes place in the country, you can recreate those shots and people would love it and they would appreciate it and they would consider it cinematographic achievement, the technical achievement, because it's undeniable what they do camera wise, and the way camera moves and the way the scenes are set up and the blocking and the movement and just the quality of the image is impeccable in my opinion. So I do appreciate that part very much. Yeah.
Well, I was also going to say too, because you used to work as a fashion designer. I was going to say, like,
Yeah.
the costuming is phenomenal too, because you've got these gentlemen here. They're dressed, the way that you would dress in the 19th century, right? So they're very prim and proper, and even when they're in, crazy situations like what we saw in the in the duck pond, they're still dressed, pretty well. But then you have Olga here, who's dressed in a very simple red dress. Like, like in terms of costuming, what were your thoughts on that?
Yes, when she's in the beginning of the film, where she runs with kids across the woods among the trees in the red dress and with her long hair, you're like, oh, okay, we kind of know what she is and who she is. It's wild, the color of red, it's color of passion and inhibition. And when she marries a rich guy, she starts wearing clothes that are more polished. There's this riding, when she rides a horse with a hat and a veil. There's this beautiful, like, crochet-like element on her dress.
That's when they're in the woods, right?
Right
before she gets killed. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, and all those capes that she wears with the big hood, those are pretty dramatic. Yes, I like, and then also the gypsies too, the young gypsy. Yeah, young gypsy Tina. She also wears beautiful kind of wedding-like dress at some point, and yeah, I like that. I really appreciate that.
And it's amazing too, because you would think the Soviet Union couldn't produce films of that quality, but you watch and you're like, this is This is beautiful. This is like something you would see from the BBC, really, or from any
Yeah.
Hollywood studio.
Very much so, yeah. Because if the Mosfilm, who produced that film, right, the committee,
Yeah.
which is government organization, if they back the film, they go all in with their resources. They finance it, they bring their team, the best possible people, and I think that's the advantage of having had that system then, that was kind of controlling everything, is that if they did control it, it had to be the best they could do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they couldn't just half-ass it, really.
Yeah. If Mosfilm is producing it and it's Moscow, the center, it had to be the best of the best of the best. I know that in case with Tarkovsky, he had a lot of disagreements with the studios, always, how and what, how much he needed. So I can't speak to that. But in this particular film, it looks like all of their resources went in there.
Yeah, they definitely got their money's worth. And
Yeah.
I was gonna say, in terms of the story, like it's just so brilliant, because you come to find out, or you come to the conclusion with the publisher that Kamyshev was responsible for killing Olga, and that and you would also kind of infer that he did it as an act of mercy for her.
Mhm.
And then
Камышев. Послушайте, Камышев, как вам жилось все эти годы после того, как вы убили Ольгу Урбенину? Вы любили Ольгу Урбенину с тем отчаянием, с каким любят изголодавшиеся по ласке животные. Муж может убить из ревности. Любовник, полагаю,
for her. And then you come to find out that all the characters, the fates of the characters. So her husband gets sent to the penal colony, and then the Count, he loses everything. He becomes the coach driver. And then Kamyshev, he dies like a year later.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of it's not something that you see every day in film. That's just like contrasting, radical things that are happening. The reason why he killed her, this beautiful, vibrant woman, couldn't he have just saved her and married her? Like, why not? But what comes to mind is there's this term in Russian. It's called the Russian soul. Basically, Russian soul. And it kind of encapsulates those contradicting, non-linear narrative threads or decisions or motivations in film. Oh, it's Russian soul. It's it's messy. It's non-explainable. Can't pin it down.
And you mentioned it earlier too. Is that is Russian soul at the heart of the way that Russians tell stories?
In this case, definitely.
Okay.
I would say, Stalker as well. I mean, all three films, I would say, the whole tragic comedy element, and we kind of talked about how some things might get lost in translation, and therefore some of the comedy doesn't translate. It's very much also Russian soul. There is a term like that.
I mean, is it something that kind of influences the way you tell your stories whenever you're making a movie?
If I sit down and analyze it, and just analyze one of my scripts or one of my films, I'm sure there are elements, because I am influenced by these films. I grew up watching these films, and even though in case with Hunting Party, I didn't connect to it when I was watching it for the first time, but maybe on subconscious level, it had left its mark somehow. But I'm definitely influenced by this film.
And I was gonna say, like Hunting Accent's a very beautiful film, cinematically, because the shots are perfect. The setting is perfect, the costuming is phenomenal. Everything just works. So so it's kind of like if you're a musician or songwriter, you write a really sad song, you're going to use a very happy beat to kind of get the song to work. That's what it's like for me. It's you make the movie very beautiful, but the storyline is very, very sad and very tragic. So that's the way I see it here, because it just works so well, like everything about it. And then when you get to the end, it's like, what the hell did I just see here? You know, it's like you just went on this crazy trip, and you're like, oh, okay,
right. Yeah, I agree.
All right.